Welcome back! Most of you know I'm a game developer. Please click the link in the description to watch the Dwarf Kickstarter trailer. It just dropped today. Let's get started. This parasite worm looking thing, it's pretty good, but check this out. So a few things. I'm not sure why there's a black outline here. So what I would do is, first I'm just gonna color it back to what it was before. And this helps differentiate that these two things are not the same material, object, whatever, etc., right? So I do like the red outline here. If we wanted to add some kind of shading to it, what I would do is just shade the bottom of it. See how the eye here has shading for about half of it? That'll kind of show us where the outline should be shaded. So we don't want to go all the way up here, because if the shading of the eye ends here, that means that this part of the eye is getting more light. So we might as well just end the shading right there. If you want me to critique your art, follow me and DM me on Twitter. Okay, next I'm just gonna clean up a few little things. Up here, this should probably be red. It looks like there was doubles there. This one I would also make red as well. And now it looks like the black here is kind of outline is kind of sporadic. I prefer not to use a black outline in the middle, so I'm gonna also go ahead and change this to that dark blue. I think that looks nicer. It's okay if the outline isn't everywhere. It kind of makes it look like there's a little bit more form to it. So that's fine, and I'll leave that how it is. Over here we can notice that that's a double pixel. If you did want to have some shading there, I would use the lighter color. So for example, in my last video we talked about how to shade round things. And when you shade round things, you want to shade all the way around. So this shading should probably go all the way around if you really want this to look extra round. So I think something like that is fine.
Not bad.
So over here we have some dithering to create lighting, and that's fine, but if you only have it in one spot, it almost looks like a texture. So I would really go and add the dithering to a couple of other locations on this. There we go. The reason I'm putting these dots a little bit further apart like this is it'll create a little bit more of a transition. If you wanted the shell of this eye worm to look like it's reflective, I would add a couple of highlights in a few places. Something you can also do is, if you're using dithering for shading, you might as well do it not just for the light colors, but also for the dark colors. So adding a little bit of this around the edges, it might make it look better. My words are good today. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one's pretty good, but I still think I have a few tips to push this to the next level. So one of the things I would do is clean up the base of this wall. I know you don't want it to be a perfectly straight edge, but I think it needs to be cleaned up a tiny bit. So just a little bit like that. Then add a shadow. The shadow is really gonna make it look like the wall's not flat, because anything that casts a shadow means that it is, protruding up enough for the lighting to affect the ground. I don't know if that made sense. But this right here, it'll really make it look like that wall is sticking up. So in almost every program, there's a gradient tool. I personally like Photoshop's the most. Is pick a section, you can crop it later, and then go to the gradient tool and drag it up. Now check this out. This is really gonna give dimension to that wall. Obviously the contrast is too high there, but all we gotta do is lower the opacity on that layer. And look at the difference. If you plan on using this program, which is Aseprite, please use the link in the description. It'll take you to Humble Bundle, where I get a tiny kickback if you buy it through them. Alright, so for these pots, I noticed you didn't use an outline, but even if you don't use an outline, you can still use shading to create more form. So just because you're not using an outline, doesn't mean you shouldn't put shading around the edge. This will also make your objects that are around look rounder. That's a terrible way to say. Alright, let's move on to the next one. So here we got Dax. You know what? This one's pretty amazing. I'm not even gonna critique it. Next. Oh my god, I love this submission. Check it out. We got this goblin whistling, crouching, running. He's running with his mouth open. Airborne. What? What's this? He's got a gun? And he's got a stab. All right, let's see what we can do with this. Okay, so first is I'd make this music note black. Then the outline has doubles right here. What I would do instead is just use shading. So I would find a darker color. Let me make that a little bit grayer. Yeah, something like that. That's too much. Man, finding the perfect shade is one of the things that takes the longest. So I'll go ahead and use that as the shading color, and I'm just gonna add it kind of all the way around, maybe even up here around the head, probably on that back ear. And then I'm gonna darken the outline. I love to do this, so wherever the outline wouldn't get light, wherever there's sort of like, I'm gonna put it on the under part of the hands, a little bit here, and the bottom of the ear. Okay, so I darkened the outline in a few places that wouldn't get a lot of light. I don't think the head needs this outline. It could do without it. That would probably need to go there. Then let's add a highlight to the head, just to make it look even rounder. Okay, so I changed my mind. Instead of shading near the top, I'm actually gonna add a highlight near there. There we go. That's gonna make the head look rounder. I also want to make the ear have a highlight as well. And I'm gonna pick a color that's a little bit brighter so that we can really emphasize the highlight in the ear and the top of the head. Since we're adding highlights to the top of the head, I kind of need to create a gradient. These two are too drastic. You can go ahead and pick a color, go to about halfway, and that's a great way, that's a great way to get transition colors. There, I think that's working. Now it looks like it has a lot more lighting. So since this guy's head is sticking out, the shading under the chin, this guy's got a big head. It could be a little bit bigger, so I will make it bigger, and that makes the head look like it's protruding a little bit more. And then maybe some of this highlight, we could do it to give him a belly button, or we could use the darker color to give him a belly button. It'll add a little bit of personality. And then sometimes what I like to do is I like to add highlights on the hands. I think that's pretty good. So something else that we would probably want to do is add a shadow. Usually I would use a transparent color, but in this case I'm just going to use a dark blue, which is the color of the background. And for the shadows, I usually make them round. If we wanted the goblin to look mean, it would be kind of fun to add some eyebrows there. But if we wanted the goblin to look kind of cute, we could add some rosy cheeks. When you're sending me art, there's a few things you need to pay attention to. Make sure that the color mode is RGB. And then another thing is, when you go to File, Save As, the best thing to save it as is an Aseprite file. But if you're using another program, just save it as a PNG. Where is that? Right there. In Aseprite, you can also go to File, Export. And when you export stuff, do not send it at a larger scale, because then I can't go in and edit the pixels. If you haven't watched the Dwarf trailer yet, I'm mad at you. Remember, the link's in the description. After you watch it, please follow the Kickstarter. It'll notify you when the Kickstarter's up, and we'll know how big the hype is. Pretty please, it's just one button click. Love you guys. See you next week. Deadline.